What's up, you guys? It's your boy Miguel giving you your daily dose of radiation. In today's video, we're covering how to deal / understand or get to know your new doctors you get to work with. So both, it's mainly not residents, because residents usually, the doctors who are at the facility kind of let them know, hey, this is how we do stuff, da da da. It's mainly like the new doctors who come, like maybe like at our hospital, we have other bigger ones or other, like there's like hundreds of our like hospital branches of it. So sometimes they'll transfer, sometimes like we'll have a from the ER, from the floor, from surgeons, from wherever. And especially in the ER, I've noticed recently that a lot of the time us as Xray techs, like there's there's a general amount of knowledge that regardless of where you go, you have to know. But then there's, because of what you have in the facility as far as equipment and capabilities, or maybe because of the responsibility that it falls in the hospital, sometimes like the doctors, the ER, the surgeons don't really know that. So sometimes you kind of have to like let them know, because like sometimes I've recently was in a situation where one of the ortho surgeons overnight came in, someone got shot and had like some emergency stuff going on. And he ordered something that wasn't typical. We still were able to accommodate and do it to our best of our ability. But then they requested something called a CAD ball, CAD and then ball, which if you're in surgery, if you're in ortho tech, you're like, oh, Miguel, da da da. Like it's this small little circle you put against the board. It gets the comparison, da da da. Which we all figured out later on, but since we're not the ortho site, it wasn't no one's radar at our department what that was. So like when the order came up and it was like in different colors than red, like that the doctor wanted it like this, we stared at it for a while. And it wasn't until we got to talking to our manager and to the other doctor and stuff, communicating, like we'd let them know, like, hey, we don't have this equipment here. And like we had to communicate, and which certain doctors are more understanding. Other ones are like, why don't you have this? They have this and da 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 and da da da, and it becomes like a whole deal. And then it kind of goes to the upper management, like the head of the radiology or your manager, and they kind of will handle it. Other times it'll be like the way they want stuff done. Like we know if someone breaks in the ER, at least where I work, if someone breaks their hip, someone breaks their shoulder or something, and they had to probably go to surgery, we already kind of know in the back of our head, most likely this person's going to get a chest x-ray for a pre-op. That kind of goes in the loop in our back of our mind. We already know. And depending on the doctors, certain ones are like, hey, I'm gonna order a chest x-ray and I'm gonna order a hip. You're going to do both. And then we've had one that was like, hey, if you see that the hip is, broken pretty severely, do the chest x-ray. If you don't see that it's broken, don't do the chest x-ray. And we're like, okay, that's a little different, but okay. Because as x-ray techs, you're not supposed to technically diagnose. But like, if you see enough hips or enough shoulders and it don't look right, you can already kind of know that it may be broken, it may not be broken. Like, after seeing so many, you can kind of already understand. Like, you can kind of tell. And like, from my understanding, if he's like, within doubt, ask him. Ask the doctor. Be like, hey, can you look at this? You think it's broke? So we can do the chest x-ray. Or, once again, if you have the time, just wait till it gets read by the radiologist. And if it says it's fractured or whatever, then you can proceed to do the chest x-ray. we've had those situations that are a little bit different, which aren't a big ordeal. But we've had a few doctors that have come into our emergency room, and maybe they came from like higher trauma levels, or they've had different equipment. We've had a few times where like the doctor will be like, okay, what about the C-arm? And we're like, well, we just have basic X-ray. Like, C-arm is up at surgery. And then he's like, well, that's what I want. And then I'm like, well, you're gonna have to take him upstairs, because like none of our, like, I could maybe, because I learned how to do it in school, I could maybe mess around and get it working. But like, as far as me efficiently doing it, probably not, because I'm just used to doing basic X-rays and occasionally a little bit of fluoroscopy that we're kind of have to know, because like if there's an emergency and they need us to get stuff done, there's always a tiny chance that we have to do some fluoroscopy work, which, I mean, at nighttime we usually don't deal with that. But so I've noticed that a lot of the time some of these doctors aren't aware of the, even with the nurses and other stuff. There's been many times where they'll come in and they'll request this or they'll request this, and I'll see like the charge nurse have to like kind of talk to certain, like they'll pull them to something like, hey, this is how we do this here, or hey, we don't have that. And like sometimes it'll be a big deal where if like they came to the hospital expecting certain stuff a certain way, I've seen many just kind of like ended up leaving our hospital and we'll never see them again, because they'll just go somewhere else to get it. I guess they want a certain stuff done a certain way. I don't know. Certain doctors are very, especially surgeons or like orthopedic people, like they want certain stuff a certain way, which I understand, like to do what they have to do. They have their own little, but sometimes you have to kind of like let them know, like maybe we don't have that, or maybe like that's like another tech outside of the ER or wherever you're at kind of falls into their roles and kind of, and as always, as my manager has told me, if there's basic talk and it gets to the point where like the doctors or the surgeon starts making you feel uncomfortable, it starts becoming to a point where it gets kind of hostile or you don't feel comfortable, always add your managers, reach out to your managers, either the immediate manager, the shift leader, whoever it is, and inform them of what's going on, because there is no good position to where you and the doctors are fighting. It's not going to end well, and it never will. Because as I've noticed, and I've been talking to my lady who's a nurse, and we've kind of came to the conclusion that for a doctor to get fired, like something major has to happen, or there's like a set level of barriers and stuff. Like it's harder for them to replace a doctor than, like it's way easier to replace someone like us, nurses, doctors. Like it's easier to kind of, if something happens, we'll get fired. And then like there's another one. But like since there's like very finite amount of doctors compared to all the other medical fields, it's kind of an uneven balance. Which once again, it all kind of depends to certain doctors, if they've been there so long and the hospital kind of already knows, like, hey, this doctor kind of knows what he's talking about, and like you're kind of up to someone who's kind of new to the place. And then it becomes, there's been many situations I can't really talk about because you could get in trouble, but like, always just try to, communicate with both their managers, the doctors, and whoever you're dealing with. And majority of the times I've experienced, as long as you're like, hey, I could do this, but just, kind of walk me through what you want, this, that. Because, like, sometimes they'll order stuff Like I've had one where they've ordered shoulder, shot a shoulder, and then they order it again, and they're like, please do complete shoulder. And we're like, we did a complete shoulder. And they're like, no, you missed, I think it was the Xray method, the transactional, where you shoot it with like, the arm is like this, and like you'll shoot it here, and you're mainly focusing on the little joint. There's that, and we're like, oh, okay, well, you could just, next time include that, because that doesn't fall within our traditional protocol, whatever. So there's certain stuff like that that's just, you just have to talk with a doctor and stuff like that. Usually they're more, as long as you're willing to try to get what they want, and then you kind of like work with them. And maybe if it's something you really don't do, you're like, hey, I'll do my best. Can't guarantee it'll be perfect, but do what I can. Usually most doctors are pretty chill. Yeah, it's pretty where we go. See you on the next one.